The Philippines openly urged members of the United Nations to give Manila a seat in the UN Security Council, underscoring the country's track record and commitment in upholding the rule of law. The Philippines has emphasized that the rule of law and the integrity of the multilateral system must prevail amidst the current global challenges, as China increasing its aggressive action in the South China Sea, undermining the rules-based international order. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo said in a speech delivered during the UN General Assembly in New York that Manila has consistently pursued peace, the sovereign equality of states, the rights and dignity of all persons, noting that the Philippines is also recognized as the first Asian republic and a founding member of the United Nations. The Philippines campaigned for a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly last month, to be one of the 10 non-permanent members of the UN panel tasked to maintain international peace and security. The UN Security Council is primarily responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security. It has 15 members, including 5 permanent members with veto power: China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. The Philippines is vying to be one of the 10 non-permanent members, 5 of which are elected each year by the General Assembly for a 2-year term. Philippines may face China-sized hurdle as it makes its case for UN security seat. As the Philippines seeks a UN Security Council seat to address South China Sea tensions, China's veto power may limit its impact. The Philippines is campaigning for a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council, a bid analysts say could bolster its diplomatic leverage to address maritime tensions in the South China Sea. However, they warn Beijing's veto power might hinder these efforts. Without explicitly naming China, the Philippines alluded to rising tensions in the South China Sea. If the Philippines secures a seat on the Council, China is unlikely to respond strongly as both countries already engage in various multilateral forums. However, experts acknowledge that Beijing could use its veto power to block any resolutions Manila might propose concerning disputes in the South China Sea. Beijing may likely use its veto powers to strike down any resolution that Manila may try to pass regarding the South China Sea, but added that this may very well be what the Philippines aims for, to show which of the two is acting responsibly for the sake of international peace and stability. While a seat on the UN Security Council could elevate the Philippines' global influence, observers remain skeptical of the body's capacity to deter Beijing's actions in the South China Sea. Even so, the Philippines can still use the UN Security Council as a platform to raise these issues, even if the UNSC will not be able to act on it. The United Nations will hold an election for new UN Security Council members in 2026 in New York. Elected members would serve a term lasting from 2027 to 2028. The Philippines was previously a Security Council member in 1957, 1963, 1980 to 1981, and 2004 to 2005. In September 2022 at the UN General Assembly, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. announced that the Philippines is eyeing a non-permanent seat in the 15-member Security Council, saying the country is qualified due to its peace-building efforts. The Philippines is making positive headway in its campaign for the UN Security Council, secure by the country's track record of being a dependable partner, pathfinder and peacemaker in world affairs, with 8 decades of multilateral diplomacy experience as a founding member of the UN and having previously sat in the UN Security Council 4 times. The Philippines is prepared to contribute to a more resilient, inclusive, and equitable world for present and future generations and is committed to strengthening the United Nations' role in addressing today's complex crises. Since 1945, the Philippines have aligned themselves with the community of nations, upholding multilateral cooperation as the key to preserving peace and security. Observers said securing a seat on the Security Council could give Manila a platform to advocate for its interests. Manila's bid was consistent with its foreign policy goal of internationalizing its maritime disputes with Beijing, highlighting Manila's role as a responsible member of the international order, observant of international law, norms, and principles. Additionally, being a member of the Security Council provides a platform for informal consultations and dialogue, which may serve as a useful avenue for the Philippines in pursuing its strategy. Despite irresponsible and dangerous actions against Philippines' legitimate activities within its own waters and exclusive economic zone, Manila remains committed to diplomacy and other peaceful means, the Philippines' top diplomat said, adding that the country will abide by the UN Charter and Manila Declaration on the peaceful resolution of disputes. The Philippines has also rejected narratives portraying the South China Sea as a stage for a proxy war between China and the United States. The Philippines do not accept narratives depicting the South China Sea as a theater of major power rivalry because they all ignore what is an essential truth. All states in this region have a right to determine their own destiny and secure their own future. In January this year, Philippine President thanked Vietnam for its confirmed support for the Philippines' bid to get a non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council for 2027 to 2028. The Philippines wishes to thank Vietnam for its confirmed support for the Philippines' bid to the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member for the term 2027 to 2028, with a confirmed arrangement of reciprocal support with Vietnam for Vietnam's UNSC for the term 2020 to 2021. The Philippines stands ready to work with other countries towards a long-lasting resolution to the conflict in accordance with pertinent UN Security Council resolutions and general principles of international law. The Philippines and Vietnam are among the nations with overlapping claims in the South China Sea, a strategic waterway where trillions worth of seaborne goods pass through annually. While Manila and Hanoi are able to peacefully resolve their maritime woes, both countries have been pushing to keep Chinese vessels from illegally claiming parts of their respective exclusive economic zones. A new flashpoint appears to be emerging in the South China Sea as reports surface of Chinese missile boats pursuing Philippine vessels and directing lasers at a patrolling aircraft near the contested Half Moon Shoal, raising alarms over Beijing's expanding assertiveness in the disputed waters. Strategically located about 60 nautical miles off Palawan Island, Half Moon Shoal could become another source of tensions, with analysts warning of its potential as a military airbase. Last week, a Cessna aircraft operated by the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources spotted a Chinese Coast Guard vessel and two Type 22 Hubei-class missile boats chasing two B-FAR boats near the contested atoll, known as Hasa Hasa Shoal in the Philippines and Banyue Jiao in China. The Philippine vessels, BRP Datu Romapenit and BRP Teradipit, were en route to deliver aid and supplies to local fishermen when they were shadowed by the Chinese missile boats. Philippine authorities reported that one of the Chinese vessels aimed a high-intensity laser at the Cessna, an act described as a serious threat to the safety of the Filipino pilots. Lasers, when pointed directly at the eyes of a pilot, can cause temporary blindness. Beijing has been accused of employing aggressive gray zone tactics, such as firing water cannons and using high-intensity lasers, in a bid to assert its territorial claims without provoking outright conflict. On October 8, a Chinese vessel fired a water cannon at a ship of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources B-FAR in Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. Vietnam also condemns China for assault on its fishermen in the disputed South China Sea. Chinese law enforcement personnel assaulted 10 Vietnamese fishermen, damaged their fishing gear and seized about 4 tons of fish catch near the disputed Paracel Islands in the South China Sea. The fishermen reported the assault near the Chinese-controlled islands by radio on Sunday but did not identify the attackers. 3 of the fishermen suffered broken limbs and the rest sustained other injuries, according to Vietnamese state media. Some were taken on stretchers to a hospital after they returned to Quang Ngai province late Monday. Vietnam's Ministry of Foreign Affairs blamed Chinese law enforcement personnel on Thursday for the high seas attack, saying they had seriously violated Vietnam's sovereignty in the Paracel Islands, international law and an agreement by the leaders of the two countries to better manage their territorial disputes. Vietnam conveyed a protest and alarm over the attack to the Chinese ambassador in the Vietnamese capital, Hanoi. Vietnam demanded that Beijing respect its sovereignty in the Paracel Islands, launch an investigation and provide it with information about the attack, Vietnamese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Pham Tu Hang said in a statement. U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said in a statement Thursday on the social media platform X that the U.S. is deeply concerned by reports of dangerous actions by Chinese law enforcement vessels against Vietnamese fishing vessels around the Paracel Islands on September 29. The United States call on China to desist from dangerous and destabilizing conduct in the South China Sea. The Vietnamese newspaper Chien Phong cited one of the fishermen, Tran Chien Kong, as saying that two foreign boats approached them from the rear and that personnel from the vessels boarded their boat and started beating the fishermen with a meter-long, 3-foot-long pole, apparently made of iron. The Vietnamese fishermen panicked and did not fight back because they were overwhelmed by an estimated 40 attackers, it said. Another fisherman, Nguyen Thuong, was cited as saying that the attackers, who spoke through a translator, ordered them to sail back to Vietnam. The assailants then seized their fishing gear and fish catch. After being beaten, the Vietnamese fishermen were forced to kneel and were covered with plastic sheets before the attackers left. The Paracel Islands lie about 400 kilometers off Vietnam's eastern coast and about the same distance from China's southernmost province of Hainan. Both countries, along with the self-governing island of Taiwan, claim the islands. The islands have been under the de facto control of China since 1974, when Beijing seized them from Vietnam in a brief but violent naval conflict. Last year, satellite photos showed that China appeared to be building an airstrip on Triton Island in the Paracel Group. At the time, it appeared the airstrip would be big enough to accommodate turboprop aircraft and drones but not fighter jets or bombers. China has also had a small harbor and buildings on the island for years, along with a helipad and radar arrays. China has refused to provide details of its island construction work other than to say it is aimed at promoting global navigation safety. These incidents and other actions by Beijing within the Vietnamese exclusive economic zone are not new, saying that China's aggressive tactics extend to regularly deploying survey vessels into Vietnamese waters, exerting undue pressure on Vietnam to halt its legitimate oil and gas projects within its own exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. Moreover, China often threatens and attacks Vietnamese fishermen. Last month, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has pushed back against Beijing, saying his country will continue its oil and gas exploration projects in the South China Sea. Malaysia will not bow to demands by China to stop its oil and gas exploration in the South China Sea, as the activities are within the country's waters. The demand is made after the Malaysian leader insisted that Malaysians do not have a problem with China, and even calling China a true friend. The shifting of tones from Malaysian Prime Minister is the result after China warns Malaysia to immediately cease activities in oil-rich waters off Sarawak. Followed a leak of a diplomatic note issued by the Chinese Foreign Ministry to the Chinese Embassy in Malaysia, expressing Beijing's claim that the projects infringed on Chinese territory, which was published by a Philippine media outlet on August 29. Beijing has demanded Malaysia to immediately halt all activities in an oil-rich area off Sarawak waters. Despite softer diplomatic tones from Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, in an attempt to soothe its giant neighbor amid overlapping claims in the South China Sea. The demand was made in a protest note sent to the Malaysian embassy in China last month, according to the Philippine Daily Inquirer, which also published the document. The document accused Malaysia of encroaching on areas covered by the 10-dash line, Beijing's controversial map showing its claims to sovereignty in the South China Sea. It also expressed Beijing's displeasure over Malaysia's oil and gas exploration activities near the Luconia Shoals, also known as Luconia Reefs. The area is known to Malaysians as Gugusan Beding Raja Jaram, but referred by China as Nankang Ansha and Bikang Ansha. This is despite the fact that the reefs are only 100 kilometers from Sarawak and almost 2,000 kilometers from mainland China.